Well, here in the U.S., Congress is set to vote on the House's $14 billion Israel aid bill this afternoon. That bill would cut funding from the IRS to pay for the new aid, with most Democrats and even a few Republicans opposed to that.
Our next guest has said over and over that he doesn't think more U.S. aid is in the best interest of Israel or the United States. Vivek Ramaswamy is running for the Republican nomination for President of the United States and joins us now. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.
So what do you think of this House bill, where the aid is tied to something domestic, whether or not there should be funding for the IRS?
So look, all else equal, when we're $33 trillion into national debt, I do think it's better to recapture those funds from somewhere else than not. But to take a bigger policy step back, I don't think it advances our best interests or Israel's best interests for us to specifically get involved in this war. I have said that I stand in absolute terms for Israel's right to its own national self-defense, push back against the UN or other multilateral international agencies that are pushing back on Israel's right to defend itself. We will stand for Israel diplomatically. We will also stand by our pre-existing commitments of $3 to $3.8 billion per year to Israel. I will stand by that. But I don't think that specific involvement in this war is even a good idea for Israel, because that requires the U.S. to then ask hard questions about what exactly are the war objectives. And I don't think it's good for Israel to be second-guessed, and I don't think it's good for the U.S. to get involved in another war in the Middle East.
Fair enough. You've been standing out on this issue in the Republican Party and establishment traditional politics by really wanting to put the brakes on U.S. aid to Israel. And in some instances, you've said that there's an influence in this country that leads to more support for Israel. I just want to play a little bit of a conversation. I know you know what's coming, that you had with Tucker Carlson before the war on aid for Israel. Take a listen.
But the selective nature of ignoring certain other conflicts, while even more importantly, ignoring the interests of the U.S. right here at home, is what irritates the heck out of me, out of the politicians in both parties. And it is shameful. And I think that there are, frankly, financial and corrupting influences that lead them exactly to speak the way they do. That's just the hard truth.
So, Vivek, that got a lot of attention. Financial and corrupting influences that lead to our attention to some conflicts and not others. And it sounds like to a lot of people, like you're talking about Jewish money and influence in America. Well, what else would it be?
Well, look, I was actually very clear. If you listen to that entire clip that I did with Tucker Carlson, I encourage everybody to watch the full podcast. We live in an era with podcasts which actually get to truth, and then short news segments that pull and airlift things out of them. I was talking about Azerbaijan and Armenia immediately before I talked about those corrupting influences. And I do stand by this. Azerbaijan has invaded Armenia. Nobody's talking about it, or at least the Nagorno-Karabakh region where many Armenians have lived. And nobody's talking about it, despite Russia, Ukraine. This is a different part of the Russian periphery. And it is a fact that the Azerbaijani lobby is extremely strong, and that's exactly why they've been successful in securing pro-Azerbaijan policies. Even though we'll talk about good versus evil in the context of Russia versus Ukraine, nobody's talking about it in the case of Azerbaijan versus Armenia. That's exactly what I was referring to with Tucker. But the point is, more broadly, I am an opponent. I'm a strong opponent. I think the only one in either political party today of the influence of special interests, lobbying, and super PACs. This should not be a Republican issue or a Democratic issue. This is a fundamentally American issue, and I am leading the way on that, and I won't apologize for it.
Vivek, I want to stay on the topic here and talk about the anti-Semitic protests on college campuses now around the United States. You have said you're against clamping down on them. You've even said the right answer to bad speech or bad opinions isn't censorship, it's more speech. Now, you argue that hate speech is free speech, but students have been threatened with death here.
So I would follow the First Amendment. And my view is, and I've been very clear about this, it is shameful what students, even my own alma mater, have been saying. It is insane, and I think it is an extension of what I wrote about years ago, even in my first book, Woke Inc. I predicted that anti-Semitism would be the end of this road. Said that if you go to Ben & Jerry's and teach kids to order a cup of ice cream with some anti-Semitic sprinkles on top, that's exactly what they then spew back out, because young people are lost. But I don't think the right answer is censorship. The right answer to bad speech is always more speech. That's the American way. And so we need to give these young people a sense of purpose and meaning and identity. Anti-Semitism is sick, and it's a symptom of a deeper void. Now, directly inciting violence against somebody, that's not protected speech. But even chanting, I would say, the most heinous opinions about Israel or anybody else, the bargain is in the United States of America. That's protected speech, and we defeat that through open debate.
So, but I want to follow up. I understand protecting the First Amendment, but there's an issue of education as well here.
Yeah.
I mean, these students are uneducated. A lot of them don't even know what they're talking about. And so you see what happened at Cornell University, and this student was talking about shooting up the Jews and raping the women, and touting Hamas as an entity that should be supported and praised.
It is sick.
I mean,
it is sick.
So,
that's the answer.
So then what's
and you're
your,
right.
what
Education
would be your
is the answer
then?
I think education is the answer. These educational institutions have abandoned their purpose. And for years, I mean, even years ago, Black Lives Matter said on its website that standing for the Palestinian resistance was part of their movement. People ignored it back then. I called this out 3 years ago. We need to educate people on the facts. The people occupying Brooklyn Bridge in New York, where I'm talking to you from right now, I don't think they have any idea what the first clue is about what's actually happening in Israel, defending its own right to exist. And so more education, more proper education of the hard facts, rather than the indoctrination, largely woke indoctrination over the last several years that's created this spate of anti-Semitism. The right way forward is indeed, as you said it, more education. I agree with that. And that's what it takes true leaders to be able to do, to recognize that young people are starved for purpose and meaning. They flock to these causes to substitute for their hunger for real purpose. We have to give them the real thing so they don't chase wokeism or anti-Semitism or the next thing as they are today.
Fair enough. If I could just turn to the campaign a little bit and your role in it. You spent a lot of time in Iowa and New Hampshire. And there was a Des Moines Register poll recently that came out, said Trump has 43, you're at 4. What's happening? You're a dynamic speaker. You stand out because you're young. You stand out on some of these issues. Doesn't seem like you're getting much traction. What do you say to that?
Oh, I say that I started at 0.0% at the start of this year, and I'm the only non-politician who is actually on that stage right now. You know, the person who's actually running our Iowa operation, we agree we're exactly where we want to be. This is where Rick Santorum was. He ran Rick Santorum's race and Ted Cruz's race last time around, and, you know, we're going to have success this time around as well. Iowa breaks late, but here's part of what's happening. The super PACs again. All of the ads that people are seeing on television, specifically in Iowa and in New Hampshire, are paid for by super PACs. Now, in my case, I'm making an additional 8-figure investment into my own campaign. Every other politician dances to the tune of their biggest donor. In my case, that biggest donor is me. I don't want to be somebody else's circus monkey. And I do think that's going to pay off as we get to the late stages of this in both Iowa and New Hampshire. I'm solidly 3rd or 4th in the national numbers. The distortion that we're seeing in Iowa and New Hampshire so far is the product of super PAC ad buys. Well, I'm using my own pocketbook and small dollar donors now to compete directly with that in the final 2 months of this campaign. And I have full confidence we're actually going to be successful in achieving our goals in those 2 states, which puts me on path to being the next nominee. I do think it's going to take someone coming from the outside, not an existing establishment politician, someone from the next generation to reach the next generation to win this. And one tidbit I'll leave with you is that both in Iowa and New Hampshire, we're seeing the kinds of people coming to our events and supporting us as being people who have never participated in the Iowa caucus before. That's remarkable because those people don't get polled. And so I do think we're on track to deliver a major surprise in Iowa. We're making major financial investments in the next couple of months. And I have full confidence we're going to be successful.
So as you talk about your background, your business success, you know, you often are compared to former President Trump. You fashion yourself as a political outsider, successful businessman. Why does that continue to work for Trump, even amid all these fraud trials that we are following on a daily basis? You know, why is that not working for you, sort of that mantra, that image? And why have you not been able to pull away from his base?
I think we are. It's a long sales cycle. So if you look at who's the #2 choice for much of the MAGA base at this point, that's me in most parts of the country. And so we're not yet getting to #1 with that base, but anybody who wins this nomination is going to have to bring the America First base with us. That's the future of the Republican Party. Other than Trump, I'm the only candidate positioned to do it. Now, that being said, I think our base is going to be hungry for somebody with fresh legs. You get to be an outsider once. I come from a different generation. I'm 38 years old. I would be the youngest president ever elected if elected. And I do think it's going to take somebody from the next generation to reach the new generation of Americans, to reunite this country, to take America first to the next level. I do think we live in a 1776 moment, and reviving those ideals of the American Revolution, I'll remind you, Thomas Jefferson was 33 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. And I think that's part of what people are hungry for today, is a second positive version of an American Revolution and revival. That's what I'm leading, and I think we'll succeed.
Just on one more note, because we talked about education, you continue to push for eliminating the Department of Education, citing what you call the toxic racial and gender poison being imposed into local schools. Is that more of a concern for you versus, I mean, how many kids across this country can't even read at their grade level by high school? I mean, it's appalling.
Oh, that's appalling. Absolutely. That's that's the deeper concern about our educational system, is that it is failing our students as measured by...
So what's your answer?
Well, the right answer is going to be empowering parents to choose the best possible schools. So it's not just shutting down the Department of Education. That makes the headlines. I've been very clear about our plan. Take that $80 billion budget and take as much of it as we can, put it in the pockets of parents across this country to be able to choose where they actually send their kids to school rather than failing public schools in the inner city. This is the civil rights issue of our time. They should be able to send them to better private schools. And I say this as somebody who's had both experiences. I went to a relatively not that great public school, 1st through 8th grade. I had the opportunity to go to St. X High School in Cincinnati for high school. I want every kid in this country and every parent in this country to have the opportunity to choose where they send their kids to school, regardless of how many green pieces of paper are in their bank account. And it's a shame that $80 billion of those green pieces of paper are going to federal bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. at the federal level and funding toxic teachers' unions at the local level. So we have a comprehensive vision. Let's make education, as you said it, about educating our kids and allowing them to achieve success. I want my path to be available to every kid across this country. That's how we're going to lead. And shutting down the Department of Education is, yes, one element of that plan. That's how we'll get started.
Education, always a huge issue. Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, thanks for joining us. Good luck out there.
Thanks,
Vivek.
Good seeing you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.